Hello and welcome to pmclounge.com. In this video, we are talking about how extreme programming teams work amidst all the constant chatter and osmotic communication and everything that we talked about in one of our previous videos, where we mentioned how important communication is for extreme programming. And we discussed concepts like osmotic communication as well. If you want to check out the entire playlist of all the videos that we have done so far on extreme programming, then check out the first link in the description. It is the entire playlist. All videos are neatly populated there. You can check that out. And extreme programming is something that you should know if you work in an extreme programming environment and if you are preparing for your PMI-ACP exam. So we talked about osmotic communication. You can check that video out to understand what that really is. But the fact of the matter is, when we mentioned communication, it felt as if there's constant chatter wherever the extreme programming teams work. And this is more of a software programming team, right? It is a bunch of engineers. How can engineers work amidst constant chatter? That's the question that we are trying to answer today. Now, there's a concept called flow. What exactly is flow? When you are on a roll, working on something or coding for that matter, you get into a zone. So, you're working on something for some time, you get into a place called zone. This is not a physical place, of course, this is more of a mental place, right? So, zone is basically a state of high concentration where work or code just seems to flow. So, this is the concept of flow. There are several books out there. Several people talk about flow all the time. Several people talk about the concept of deep work and how important it is to get into this zone, to get into this flow of working, right? So that's something which you might think is useful to programmers. Now, this state itself is called flow. So we were talking about flow. When you get into this zone, right, the state of high concentration, this is known as flow. Now, there have been studies that suggest that it takes about 15 to 45 minutes for a programmer to reach the state of flow, to reach this zone of high concentration, right? So the programmer needs to work for 15 to 45 minutes, and then the programmer can reach this state of flow. Now, any interruption, like a phone call, a spam call, whatever, or even an email, right? They can completely break this flow that the programmer is in. So the programmer is working, they are in this high concentration, this state of high concentration, and if they get a phone call or an email or a ping or anything, it breaks the flow. Now, this means that if you get two phone calls every hour, right, every hour of your working day, if you are getting two phone calls, it is as good as sitting at the desk all day without getting anything done, because you didn't end up in that state of higher concentration, right? You never reached flow that day because you were getting two phone calls every hour. And this is not out of the ordinary if you keep getting those spam calls that some people might definitely be familiar to. Now, let's talk about what's all this communication, right? So, why are we giving so much importance to the constant chatter, to osmotic communication, and to all that? Why is extreme programming rating communication so high when what it is doing is it is possibly breaking the flow of the programmers, right? So, is that true? Actually, that is not true. There have been studies that prove that it is extremely difficult to concentrate in dead silence. So, if you want people to sit in silence and just churn out code, it is wrong, because it is hard to concentrate in dead silence. That doesn't mean constant chatter is a must. It doesn't mean that, but it just means that whenever there's a little bit of activity around you, it is pretty easy to tune it out and start focusing. So, a little bit of activity is actually required for your mind to start focusing on something, right? If you're working in dead silence, then even a pin drop is something that can break your focus. But if you're working in an environment where there's a little bit of chatter, you can zone that out and you can actually start to concentrate. Now, this is the main reason why you see so many people are working at the cafes all the time. You will see engineers writing code at the cafes, right? And this is also the reason why there are so many athletes out there that give their best performances despite the fact that they are literally surrounded by screaming fans. They are still able to focus. And that is why it is important to have that little bit of chatter going, to have that communication going, to have that little bit of osmotic communication happening around you when you are working. Now, the problem is that a lot of people buy the coder image that is being sold to them. And this is the coder image. The coder image is that someone sitting in a dark room and churning out code. That's not how it works. Programming is a creative, intellectual, and a social activity. Programming is not something that you do in seclusion. It is creative activity, it is intellectual, and it is social as well. And programmers are not going to code alone in dark. Actually, professional programmers, they work as a team. They often discuss the solution along the way. So there's always a lot of back and forth going on when programmers are actually writing code, because they might be discussing solution, they might be finding new ways to deliver the solution, right? So they need a lot of people around to constantly chat. Of course, not random people, the people that are working on the project that they are working on, right? So they need team members around to discuss solutions. So that is why do not buy this image. Never buy this image of a coder working in the dark. That's not how programming works. That's not how professional teams do programming. In fact, the question that I have for you today is, have you ever seen an engineering team where programmers prefer to work alone in dark? Let me know in the comments. You are a project manager, you might be working in an agile environment, you might be dealing with programmers and coders and engineers. Have you ever seen an engineering team that prefers that their programmers are going to work alone in dark? Let me know in the comments. I highly doubt you have met anyone like that though. And that's all that we had in this video. I hope you got value out of it. I hope you were able to understand why a little bit of chatter is required, why communication is so important. If you like our work, consider contributing at pmclounge.com/contribute, and definitely keep learning and head over to pmclounge.com, your number one free PMP and project management resource. Like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.